Hello, puppies and kittens. I got a message from Michael, my guest tonight, who said that he just wanted to share with me his deconversion story. And I have to confess that I'm interested in these. I've heard a number of deconversion stories, and what strikes me about them is that when you hear conversions to Christianity, they always seem to follow the same sort of formula, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, what I've heard over and over again is kind of the same thing, and they don't make any sense. But the way out of religion is wildly varied. There's a lot of different things that will cause a chink in the armor, so to speak, in the armor of God, or whatever. And it's always interesting to see the different ways that first beam of light gets through. And so, Michael, welcome aboard. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Go ahead and tell me your story, please.
Well, I was born and raised in the Foursquare Christian Church. And
tell me about that Foursquare Christian Church.
Foursquare, it's very fundamental, very conservative, right wing, denomination. They believe,
Jesus. Is there anything particularly, odd about it? Are they one of the homophobic churches? Are they one of the...
Yeah, they're very against homosexuality.
Like snake handling, that kind of thing, or
no, nothing like snake handling. No, nothing like that.
Okay,
but it's I haven't done much research on it, but it's kind of like Baptist, basically. They believe in the Bible is the literal the literal word of God. 6-day creation. The creation, everything that you talk about, the creationist, story, and so it's homosexuality is a sin, stuff like that. Jesus was Son of God, stuff like that. So, I've always had a problem when I was really young. I always had a problem believing in a God, basically. Especially, I was born with a birth defect called spina bifida that put me in a wheelchair at 5 years old. And so I'll back up just a bit here so you can see it. I'm in a wheelchair, so I don't know if your viewers or if you could see that very well. So there was that, and but when I was really young, family went to church. I was an only child, so we went to church a lot. And as I got older, when I was 13, I was diagnosed with end-stage renal disease. I started dialysis. It's kidney failure, and I was put on dialysis, and that was when I really started, because of the way I was born and having this disease, how could there be a God, when I was born like this, and I never really thought about it much, and then when I started dialysis, that sort of increased my belief that there was no wasn't, even though we went to church, I kept it quiet.
You're at this point, you're questioning God's perfect design.
Yeah, perfect design. Yeah, intelligent design, perfect design, exactly. And then I got a transplant when I was 14. My dad was the donor, and we got a lot of help from the church from the church we were going to at the time, and so it was just, and then let's see. I'm sorry, I'm trying to gather my thoughts here. After my transplant, I started to get really involved in the high school group at the church. And I started to get real involved, started reading the Bible and things, and sort of got serious about being a Christian. And by my junior year of high school, I was really getting involved with the high school group, and my senior year of 2001, I was in the leadership team at the high school group, and really serious about my Christian faith. Going to church Sunday mornings, Wednesday nights, involved in Bible study and everything. And then, ironically, that was the same year that it all came crashing down. After 9/11, I just started going back to this way of thinking. If there's a God, if there's a perfect design, or if there's, how could this loving God, all powerful, loving God, allow something like this to happen? Couldn't he have done something?
Especially when the people who commandeered those planes believe they're doing God's work.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, they thought that they were doing all his work. Exactly. Yeah. And that was, religion caused that, and it was just a slippery slope from there, because I didn't like, I guess maybe I didn't see it when I was younger, but I started seeing the political movement of right-wing Christians. And the more I got involved in it, and the further it was going, I just thought to myself, I can't support this anymore. And so I started thinking about what was I going to do? Fast forward to 2007, I moved out on my own, in my own apartment that you see behind me. And I did some church hopping for a while. I went to 2 churches. But nothing really stuck. I kept questioning the Bible, kept questioning, and and during 9/11, I never said anything to anybody that I was questioning my faith, because I was on the leadership team. I felt like I couldn't say anything to anybody, because I was supposed to be there for other people who were struggling, and it like I said, in 2007, when I stopped going to church in 2007, I just felt like I didn't fit anymore. The last time I went, this is not for me. Sure.
Let me ask you to follow up on something. You said you went to a couple other churches.
Yeah.
What was your thought at that point? Were they completely different denominations? Did you go from like Lutheran to Catholic or Baptist to Catholic?
Oh no, they were the same denomination. Thinking back then, let me think. They weren't completely different. I certainly know it wasn't Catholic.
Okay.
They were different denominations. But I don't think it was.
They were still Protestant.
They were still teaching the same things that I had always heard, throughout my life, So it wasn't drastically different.
That's one of the things that I find interesting that, a lot of people don't do. I think it's interesting when people go to something that is completely outside of their. If you grew up in a church,
mm-hmm.
and then you go to something that is just as different as can be, like taking kids from a speaking in tongues Baptist kind of a thing
Yeah.
and taking them to an ISKCON Krishna temple,
Yeah.
or you're going going to a mosque after that, or
Yeah.
what have you, and certainly Catholic churches, or because Catholic is pretty dramatically different
Yeah.
from Protestant, and I was interested in when I saw Glenn Beck who's Mormon, and he was giving a kind of a sermon to it was a political rally, and he's giving a sermon kind of to an audience that is almost entirely evangelicals.
Yeah.
And he's talking about the prophecies in Third Nephi, and I'm mystified at how they're all buying into that.
Mm-hmm.
And my only thought is, dude, if your audience believes in the miracles of Third, or the prophecies of Third Nephi, that technically makes them Mormon. But no one in the audience realizes that. But it's interesting. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to.
Well, something you mentioned too is I didn't even think about it. The Foursquare Church that I was raised around, speaking in tongues, that was taught that was one of the Christian doctrines, speaking in tongues. And I remember trying that, and I was, gosh, I think it was before I was in high school, maybe I think, and I just felt so stupid. Thinking back, this is just so stupid. I never understood it. But after 9/11, like I said, and living and going to different churches, I finally just stopped for a while. I had to really.
Can you let me know what was going on in your head at this time?
Kind of like just a lot of things. Just where does this fit into my life anymore? Do I even believe it? I should have thought a lot about this before we had this discussion. I'm trying to gather my thoughts here. I don't mean this.
Well, perhaps if I interrupt.
The last time I will. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I was saying I shouldn't interrupt.
No, that's okay. I will say the last time I went to a church in 2007, I went there and they were deep in prayer and doing this prayer thing and and they were praying. They were praying about their future spouses and doing the whole purity thing about praying about their future husbands and wives and thing. And I got there kind of late because I had to take the city. I have to take public transportation everywhere because I'm in a wheelchair. I don't have a car. But I got there kind of late, and I got there and I just sat there, and I wasn't at that place in my life where I was thinking about that kind of stuff. And I had been feeling this way I've been feeling about this way for a long time. That I just didn't really fit in anymore. And just looking around, just watching people pray about their future wives and the purity stuff. And I turned my wheelchair around and I went out and I never went back. And I spent about, I was about 23 when that happened. And I spent about 2 years I stopped going to church and I fell into a very deep depression. Because
really, that throws me. Why was that? Why would that be?
I guess it's because I know church had been such a big part of my life, and I stopped going to church and I didn't know And like I said, I just didn't know if I had wanted to believe it anymore, and I didn't have those contacts I had before, the human interaction, people to talk to.
So kind of like breaking up with a lover then.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
and
I have trouble relating to that because I mean I have very vague memories that my family must have taken me to church as many as 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
I would guess, and I could never stomach it. I mean, I remember being a little bitty kid, and I'm listening to some guy tell me stuff that as if it's a fact that he doesn't know himself. And if I'm
Mm-hmm.
asking how does he says all of this is true, how does he know?
Yeah.
Because I mean, I would ask that of anybody. You tell me anything is true, I'm going to want to know how do you know that?
Mm-hmm.
And then they would show me the evidence leading to that conclusion. But of course, with religion, it never can.
Yeah, it's just all speculation, and they read the Bible like, well, I just read you the Bible. Why don't you believe it? Why it's they act like reading the Bible is an absolute fact. And
Yeah, and
that's
not
one
only
thing that
that, but look at all the different interpretations thereof.
yeah, and different denominations, and yeah, and they can't even agree on their own
Are you an old Earth creationist? Are you a theistic evolutionist? Are you a young Earth creationist? Are you a
right.
geocentrist, a flat earther? You got all of these options.
Yeah, yeah, and or what denomination are you? They can't even agree on doctrine or anything else like that.
Yep. Is it forbidden to dance? Is it okay to dance? Yeah. Is circumcision permissible or is it mandatory?
Yeah,
That's all of that.
yeah, yeah. And I back up here a little bit. I did get baptized in 5th grade, and so I was, and I've now that I'm an atheist, and I tell people, my background and where I come from and where I'm at now, and I've been accused of, oh well, you were never really a Christian to begin with, and that's total bullshit. You know, um,
Yep.
that's total bullshit because I mean, I was, I went to church, I read the Bible, I did the Christian thing, and then I started questioning it, and like I said, September 11th was started it pretty much. Other than my own personal life, about being born in a wheelchair and with a disability, the health issues I've had, and after 9/11, there was the argument of free will was being bounced around in the church and around Christian circles, and I that was just one argument. I couldn't. So I was like, well, okay, wait, time out. You're telling me that God gave 19 hijackers the free will to kill almost 3,000 people, innocent 3,000 people, but what about their free will? Why why didn't they have free will? What about their free will being trapped in those buildings and in the airplane? It just didn't, and I still ask myself that question almost 20 years later. Oh, over 20 years now, you know, you know, I never bought that argument, and I always thought it was bullshit, and that was the beginning of the end.
Yeah. So I don't know where to go from there. You said that was the beginning of the end.
Well, and then I moved out, and like I said, in 2007, I moved out of the house and start in 2008. My father's kidney that he donated to me in 97, that kidney failed, and I ended up back on dialysis.
Wow,
I
that
ended up
one.
Yeah, I had one kidney from 97 to 2008, around September, October of 2008.
What do you do in that case?
They put me back on dialysis. I was in the hospital, and they put me back on dialysis.
And you just have to stay there until because I don't know anything about this. I'm sorry to say.
Oh well,
so you just have to stay on this machine basically until somebody comes up with another donor kidney.
Yeah, I actually I'm not on the list right now to get a kidney. I've thought a lot about it. I've had some personal issues in my family life. I don't have a support system right now to get to San Francisco. I'm in Fresno, California, and I was on a list for a while in San Francisco, California, um and some things happen with my support system, and so I'm and family issues, and so I'm not on a list anymore. But
Mhm.
but yeah, I'm on dialysis 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday mornings, and I have to go for about 3 hours a day to be on the machine. And
Wow.
it basically does what the kidneys are supposed to do. It cleans your blood, takes off fluid, and things like that. So I'm pretty tired afterwards. I come home and sleep all day.
Yeah. So, is there anything else about the deconversion? Like
Yeah, I when I
you
when
went, you
I
said you went through a depression. I mean, how did you get out of that?
uh, uh well, I still deal with depression now, but I think has a lot to do with my situation and being on dialysis. But I one day I went to a Borders bookstore when they were still around, um, and I was just looking around. I really didn't know. Um, I didn't know I was going to walk out of there with two atheist books, which I did. That's getting ahead of myself, but getting ahead of myself here. But um, I was just looking around. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted to believe. I just knew that I didn't want to be a Christian anymore, because I saw a lot of things in the church. Like I said, a lot of things in church that was happening, that they were politically, they were going in a direction that I didn't. And I know you know how this goes. Politically, they were going in a direction that I did not agree with. Um, and I didn't want to support it anymore. And while I was at Borders bookstore, in the bestseller not nonfiction area, I saw Richard Dawkins' The God Delusion and Christopher Hitchens' God Is Not Great. And I kind of funny. I was looking at them, and I hesitated for a while. I was like, do I really want to pick those up? Because I knew what they were. Um, it's like, and so I thought about it for a while. Started looking at them, breezing through them. And long story short, I bought Christopher Hitchens' book, God Is Not Great, and Richard Dawkins' God Delusion. And I also bought another book about secular human in defense of secular humanism. Um, and there's something I wanted to share with you and your viewers, um, because on my way home, like I said, I take public transportation. So I took city bus home, and I kid you not, Aaron, I am as serious as a heart attack when I tell you this. Excuse me, sorry, it's got notification on my phone. Um, there was a guy on the bus stop with me, and he saw my bag with the books in them, and he looks at him and he says, "You're an atheist?" And I says, "Well, yeah, I'm thinking about it." And I swear, he says verbatim, he says, "Well, I think all atheists should be killed."
Whoa. There is no hate like Christian love.
And and I and I know we're not officially on your YouTube channel yet, but if you wanted to edit that out later, you can. But I wanted to tell you that. Um, and I just thought to myself, you are one of the reasons why I'm thinking about leaving the church. I didn't say nothing to him. I didn't say a word, but I thought that to myself. I was like, I can't believe he just said that to me. You
Yeah.
know, um,
No,
and right
no
then,
shame, no awareness of, no situational awareness.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I thought, well, okay, maybe I will go through with this. And so long story short, I read those books. Um, here I am. I found your channel. I found Seth Andrews. Over the weekend I just got done reading Seth Andrews' book. I don't know where it's at. Deconverted, and that really, I'm gonna go through it again sometime. But that really helped me out. Because there was this. I don't know if you read his book or not, but there's a thing in his book where he went through a time of anger, and I'm still dealing with it about the anger.
I wish I had time to read as much as I want to.
Yeah, me too.
Unfortunately, what I have to do for a living has me too engaged with too many other things to really take in the kind of information I want to.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry to say.
Yeah, I don't get to read as much as I do. I mean, you can see my books behind me. I got tons of books around here behind me that I have never even, I bought them and I've never even read them because I come home and with dialysis and, doctor's appointments, and just life gets tough. And so I just come home and crash out, after dialysis. I don't get to read as much as I'd like to, but
I hear you.
But,
I said, I hear you.
Oh yeah. Yeah. But, yeah, here I am. I've changed, and I told my mom this was back in, I would say 2005. No, I'm sorry, 2009. Yeah, because I moved here in 2007, 2009. Because I went to visit her. She wasn't living in Fresno at the time. She moved back here to take care of me for a while after I ended up back on dialysis and be a caregiver. But she, at the time, she had separated from my dad and wasn't living here in Fresno anymore. And so I went to visit her for a couple weeks at Mother's Day, and we were sitting at Denny's. And I was thinking, I was like, I don't know if I should bring this up right now, but I was sitting there thinking about it. And I thought, okay, I'll go ahead and mention it. And I says, Mom, I got something I want to tell you. And she goes, what? And I says, well, I've been doing a lot of soul search. Well, not soul. I say soul, but not literally. But I've been doing a lot of thinking and a lot of soul searching, and I'm not a Christian. I wanted to let you know I'm not a Christian anymore. And she was okay with that. She wasn't too bothered by that. But then when I told her, and we started talking, and I says, well, I wanted to tell you that I became an atheist. And we were sitting there at Denny's, and she was eating her thing, and I thought that poor lady was going to cry. I really did. I really thought she was going to cry right there. And I saw a look on her face, and I was like, maybe this was not the right time to tell her, but I didn't know any other time. I didn't know when I was going to get the chance. So I just thought, tell her. She accepted it, eventually accepted it and everything. I have her boyfriend to owe for that. Because, I was in my mid-20s when, and he says, Diane, he's a grown man, he could do what he wants, he could believe what he wants, and so she accepted it, even though I think she did deep down, she disagrees with it.
Yeah, it always leaves me curious that believers look at atheism as a belief. It's like they don't know how else to look at it. I mean, what I'm telling you is that I don't believe. I'm not saying that I believe in no Godism. I mean, I don't believe the claims of God. You tell me that, I get messages. I mean, I can't tell you how many times a day I get these people telling me that Jesus is here for me, and Jesus loves me, and Jesus will save my soul, and all this crap. And I have to tell them that is an empty, unsupported assumption of impossible absurdity, which you are asserting as if it's a matter of fact. And everywhere outside of religion, we would call that a lie. When you claim facts that are not facts while pretending to know things you don't know, that's called lying.
Yeah.
And they never get that.
Yeah, they never do. Yeah.
Anyway, do
Yeah,
you have any more?
and I'll be honest with you, I never got it either. When I was growing up in the church, I'm education was not encouraged in my house. Kind of like I've heard your story of how you grew up, and I grew up sort of the same way. It was religion, 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 religion. Bible, Bible, and religion, and so education and critical thinking was not encouraged in my home. And that was torture for me, because with my personality and how I am, I'm just like you. I've always been curious. I've always had a curious mind. Where did this come from? I had a guy in one of the even when I was going to church, I always asked questions. When I was talking to this one guy in high school, he was the intern, and I always used to ask him questions about the Bible, and they were answers he didn't have the questions. He didn't even there were questions he didn't have the answers to. But that was frowned upon too, growing up. Being open-minded and critical thinking and asking questions and thinking was just, you start doing that, people would say, well, what does the Bible say? Let's go back to the Bible. What does the Bible say about this? And I was like, and I started getting, used to irritate the crap out of me sometimes.
Yeah. I remember when I tried to read the Bible, I'm like, I'm just starting out. I'm on the first chapter, first pages. And I just go, Mom, what's a firmament? Yep, and I realized then she's not going to be of any help through the rest of this book either.
Yeah. Yeah, and after I left the church and discovered your channel, and so I started reading the Bible objectively, and I started reading things that the church doesn't talk about. They cherry pick. They cherry pick what they want, what they want to believe, and they picked out the good stuff, what they want, and then they throw it away. And I started reading things in the Bible that I had just, honestly, I'm embarrassed, I've never read, never heard of. Judges 19 is the most, Judges chapter 19 is the most awful chapter that I've ever read, about abuse against women. It's about, I can't remember the whole chapter, but it's
I know what you talk about. The woman that the servant, the slave girl who
yes,
gets tossed to the dogs, more or less, just to have the savages ravage her until she's basically dead.
Yeah, overnight. Yeah, they
and the guy has the description. The guy has no compassion for her as a human.
Right. And by the description, you could pretty much tell that it was raping her overnight, pretty much. And I'm embarrassed to say I had never read that part of the Bible, and I read now and it's like, how did I miss this shit? Yep.
Yep.
And
it doesn't stop. I mean, like there's a number of things that people tell you that they've read the Bible X number of times, and I have to wonder, well, you read it once, it, right? But you don't, because there's always things that you miss. Mm-hmm. Like I remember reading the Gospels for like the third time, and happening across things that I don't remember reading this. I know I've read all of this, but I mean, I'm suddenly happening across this thing, which is actually kind of profound. Mm-hmm. And I'm getting ready to read them again because I want to make a video on this thing that I've never addressed in any of my previous work, but I want to make sure that I have everything in context and compare some different definitions or some different translations to make sure of the verbs being used. Mm-hmm. But it's when Jesus, after Jesus has died, he comes back and his followers don't recognize him. he looks different,
Mm-hmm.
and his own mother doesn't recognize him. And I mentioned this to Christians, and they don't know where this passage is, so they don't remember it. Okay, well that's interesting. I'm going to go, so I'm going to have to go back and read it again and make a video based on that topic.
Yeah.
Anyway, as you were saying.
Well, yeah. And I've mentioned to Christians about, you know, giving them examples of what the Bible says, and they'll just deny it. Oh, the Bible doesn't say that. Well, yes, it does. Whatever, scripture I was reading to them at the time.
Yep. I love how that's not what it says becomes that's not what it means.
Right. You're taking it out of context. Yeah, exactly. You're taking it out of context, or you need to read the entire chapter. Well, I read the entire chapter of Judges 19, and I still think it's despicable.
Yep. And and the entire context of the surrounding chapter or the book or the whole compilation still remains consistent with this.
Mm-hmm. There was another
not
story
out
I
of
wanted.
context.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
There was another story I wanted to tell you when I was in high school. And that was when I was getting serious about my Christian faith. I did dabble in a little bit of creationism. Not. I didn't get real deep into it, thank goodness. But I was taking a biology. I can't remember what year it was in high school. I think it was my freshman year. I was taking a biology class, and we got to evolution, and we had this white strip of paper, and we had to line out the evolutionary timeline. Okay. And I, when things came about, dinosaurs and things like that, all this. And I was really thinking about it, and I went to my parents and I says, I don't want to do this. I don't believe, we're Christians. We don't believe in evolution and things, we don't. And obviously looking back, I didn't understand it, most creationists and most Christians don't. But so my mom and I went to my teacher, and we says we're religious. We don't believe in evolution and everything. So we had the, typical parent teacher discussion about that. And he allowed me to do the 6 days of creation in the Bible story. And I remember there was another student who did the same thing. And I flunked, he gave me an F, I flunked it, and he had every right to do that. Looking back, he had every right to flunk me because I was wrong. Yeah. And I'm 41 years old. Looking back at that now, it's like, man, I missed an opportunity to actually learn something. And like I said, education was not encouraged in my house, and that's why I like your channel so much. And I left comments on your channel about how I like your science videos are my favorites because I'm still learning all this stuff. I was diagnosed with a form of dyslexia in college when I was going to community college. And I've always been kind of slow and learning and stuff. I love learning, I love reading, obviously, because see the books behind me, but I don't retain information very well for some reason. It takes me a long time. Repetition, for me, I have to repeat it, beat it into my head, for me to
we have different ways of learning too. It's a lot easier for me to learn by doing. Mm-hmm. So simply reading a thing won't necessarily embed it unless there's discussion of the thing we just read.
Yeah.
Now it's embedded.
Yeah. Yeah, I could do that. And I'm a very visual learner. So if I'm reading something like right now, I'm reading a book by Stephen Hawking. I don't know if you could see that. Sorry. No, is that?
Yeah, too dark to make out the title, at least for me.
Brief answers to the big questions. I'm almost finished with it, and there's I have to go back through it and really, because I'm just reading it and I'm just not understanding a lot of things that he's talking about, because it's a lot of physics, and I understand. I like biology better and evolution better, but I have to see things. I'm a visual learner, so I have to go through this book. And go ahead.
No, I was just going to say we're closing up on about the end of our time, so I want to make sure that you covered every point.
Okay.
That you wanted to make, and
Yeah.
then okay. Do you have any final comments?
No, I think that's it. But I just wanted to say, I love your channel, and I want to start. I'm glad this thing's working. I just bought this, but I want to start my own YouTube channel. It's time for me to stop being so silent about, and start speaking up for this stuff, and for my beliefs and
yeah.
But yeah, I wanted to thank you for your channel and what you do. I really do.
Oh, much appreciated, and you're welcome.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you.
All
right, I'll go ahead and close it up.
Okay.
Say goodnight and whatever else you'd like.
All right, good night. Thank you.